the movie starts with Henry kicking off his day in the most chill way possible, watching his precious toy robots get trashed by some kids outside. Totally normal, right? That is, until his dad shows up to give him the usual motivational pep talk, "You're worthless, son." With an opening like that, you just knew Henry's day was only going to get better. It doesn't take long before he wakes up in full Russian RoboCop mode inside a pod in Moscow. And who wakes him up? Estelle, the multi-talented scientist/wife, who's already busy adjusting our hero's vision and installing a brand new robotic arm like she's changing a light bulb in the kitchen. After crushing a fruit to test the arm and putting a wedding ring on his finger, yes, she brought the ring, Henry was ready for the chaos ahead. There's no time to even calibrate poor Henry's voice before a group of mercenaries, led by the telekinetic Akan, bursts into the lab like they've got all the time in the world. Because, of course, there's nothing better than interrupting a cyborg romance moment with a full-on invasion. Akan, channeling his inner telepathic Darth Vader, stabs Timothy in midair while Estelle and Henry make a run for it through the tunnels. They can barely breathe as they almost fall out of the aircraft, and when they try to escape using the pods, another scientist named Martin bails on them, leaving the couple stranded. That's when Henry, in his ultimate act of robotic chivalry, pulls Estelle into the pod, saving the day, until the parachute fails, and they crash land on the road. Cyborg life isn't easy. Henry, ever the polite hero, barely gets a second of peace with Estelle unconscious in his arms when two vans full of mercenaries surround him. After getting beat down by Yuri and electrocuted, Henry escapes into the parking lot and kicks off a destruction spree, ripping out windshields and mowing down goons like he's starring in a Russian version of Mad Max. This is where we meet Jimmy, an ally with a peculiar talent, dying and coming back in bizarre ways. Jimmy hands Henry a communicator, and in a plot involving ripped-out hearts and energy regulators, our cyborg hero ends up battling mercenaries in a nightclub full of Jimmy clones and girls, like it's the most normal thing in the world. One interesting point in all this chaos is the energy regulator hidden in Dimitri's heart. Who would have guessed something so vital would be tucked away in such a unique organ? Personally, I would never rip someone's heart out just to grab a part, but who am I to judge a desperate cyborg? And here's a fun fact, the entire movie was shot in first person, like a live-action video game. After being thrown through the air and briefly knocked out, Henry wakes up only to find himself being dragged by a bunch of mercenaries. They were kindly digging his new grave. Sure, things looked pretty bad, but then hippie Jimmy and Olga swoop in to save him at the last minute, as always. After tweaking a few of his circuits, Jimmy discovers that Henry's got a memory blocker, just another bizarre twist in an already strange day. Now, when Henry wakes up with blurry vision and witnesses a steamy kiss between Jimmy and Olga, all that's missing is a cheesy soundtrack playing in the background. Soon after, they're off on another frantic mission. Henry takes a hit, is thrown into the air, but manages to jump onto a tank like it's just a casual bike ride. From here, the real show begins. He slices through mercenaries with a sword and, of course, finds a helicopter. In classic action movie fashion, Henry tries to hop on board, but Yuri shows up out of nowhere, cuts the rope, and sends our hero crashing back into the trees. At this point, even a horse gets involved, but Henry ends up falling off, abandoning any hope of becoming a cyborg cowboy. At a lab more secretive than the Coca-Cola recipe, Henry finds out that Jimmy and Akan used to be colleagues. But, of course, it wasn't exactly a friendly partnership since Akan decided to leave Jimmy trapped with defective test subjects and even broke the scientist's spine, just to keep the friendship alive. After an unexpected and highly uncomfortable musical number, it's clear that the lab was streaming everything to Akan. With a quick slap of reality from Henry, Jimmy finally realizes that killing himself wasn't the solution. Amid the chaos, Henry teams up with Jimmy to escape, tearing through half the mercenaries along the way. A bunch of Jimmys drop like flies, but in the end, the strategically placed bombs wipe out all the remaining agents. It's the classic enemy cleanup we all expect at moments like this, complete with dramatic explosions and all. Henry and Jimmy head to Akan's base in a van, ready for the next showdown. But of course, Akan wasn't about to make it easy. The final battle goes down all or nothing style, with Akan floating around and using telekinetic powers like he's playing a video game. And then Henry rips Akan's head off with a wire, sending the villain's body straight into the helicopter blades. You don't see creative decapitations like that every day. Estelle, ever the drama queen, shoots Henry after learning that a can became a windhead. But in true that won't stop me fashion, Henry blocks the bullet and tosses Estelle out of the helicopter without even blinking. Now, an interesting detail here is how the movie pushes the first-person action experience to the extreme. If Dredd gave us a taste of slow-motion brutality and blood, Hardcore Henry makes you practically become Henry himself, immersed in all the punches, gunshots, and explosions. And honestly, I would definitely not try jumping onto a moving tank or getting into a fistfight with cyborgs and mercenaries. Henry's horseback escape attempt was a decent try, but I would have kept going until I actually tamed that thing. How about you? If you were in Henry's shoes, what would you have done differently? Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect.